is next from New York City. See you Monday. All right, this is a Fox News Alert. Huge week for the president. So much breaking news. We have all the angles, new information covered tonight. First, we have long reported on this program, going back to 2007, yeah, journalism's dead, and also that the mainstream media mob is nothing more than an arm of the extreme, radical, new Socialist Democratic Party. They coordinate a political message. They deliver it together in concert with one another. Basically, they're like one and the same. They're an echo chamber. They repeat the same talking points. Remember, manufactured crisis. They use the same words. Tonight, we have more proof. A journalist who writes for the Huffington Post, New York Magazine, his name is Yashar Ali, took to Twitter earlier today to express his outrage. At NBC News, their politics managing editor, a woman by the name of Daphne Linzer. Now, according to Ali, she tried to intimidate him, not on behalf of NBC News, no, on behalf of the Democratic Party. Now, Ali wrote that, quote, Daphne's conduct during the call was highly inappropriate. It was unethical. She wanted the reporter to hold off on publishing the dates of an upcoming Democratic primary, not to help NBC, not so her network could do it first, but that so the DNC could inform state party leaders. Why is she advocating for them? As Ali put it, quote, she was calling to bully me into delaying the publication of an innocuous scoop, and at no point did she ever advocate for her network. It was only about the DNC. Daphne reminded Ali, quote, me, that she was a national security reporter at the Washington Post for 10 years, and they would hold stuff all the time. Hold it, hold it. Anyway, how can Comcast, think about this, they're the powerful parent company of NBC News, allow this kind of corruption in its ranks, just like a whole news channel full of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories? I have an important question, very important question for everybody watching at home tonight. Are you at all shocked that NBC News is working on behalf of the DNC? How many times have I said since 2007, journalism is dead and buried? Right now, their credibility, frankly, could never get any worse. After all, the 2+ years, breathlessly pushing the biggest hoax in American history. Now, fake news CNN and tinfoil hat conspiracy TV MSNBC, literally now shown to be liars. Who are they lying to? Their own viewers. And as I pointed out, every second, every minute, every hour of every 24-hour day, every week, month, year. And now their audience, well, they are leaving in droves. Look at this.
The media bosses, bad people, the crooked journalists, the totally dishonest TV pundits, and by the way, they know it's not true. They just got great ratings. By the way, their ratings dropped through the floor last night. Did you see that?
They had their audiences every single day, night, on the edge of their seats. It's coming, soon, now, it's happening, it's going to happen, it's definitely happening. Then the Mueller report. Well, that ended all of that. And what you saw is the most dramatic, precipitous drop in audience with tinfoil hat conspiracy TV, MSNBC, fake news CNN, hundreds of thousands of viewers. By the way, CNN not even making 1 million viewers, a historic decline. Now, the media, of course, they wanted this president to be guilty of treason. They wanted him to fail spectacularly. They still do. And that's why they are now demanding that the Mueller report be released in full and that the summary report from the Attorney General Barr is not to be trusted. But Barr announced he's going to release the whole thing anyway, so why would he lie when he knows he's releasing it and everyone's going to see it? Pretty bizarre. Watch this.
We don't have the Mueller report. We need it. They're covering up at this point.
Jeff Sessions, who the one decent thing that he did was just recuse himself. This guy is not recused. It feels like the seeds of a cover-up.
Barr then, I think, stepped out, intercepted it, put his own spin on it, and now he's sitting on it.
They are hiding
behind Donald Trump's own Roy Cohn, William Barr. Yeah, I said it. Donald Trump's own Roy Cohn, who squeezes together a couple of Simmons fragments and puts it in a letter while trying to keep from the American people the Mueller report.
They forgot to tell you that they completely said no evidence of collusion, just like the FBI said, just like the House Intel said, just like a bipartisan Senate committee said. It's now the fourth time no evidence of collusion. But the media that hates Trump with rage, the mob, desperately want the full Mueller report released. But they never asked for the FISA applications and to Carter Page be released. A bulk of information is Hillary's bought and paid for dossier. They never talk about that either. Real Russian interference in an election after they rigged an investigation into their favored candidate because they thought that she should win 100 million to zero and that we smelly Walmart voters that are irredeemable deplorables that cling to God, guns, Bibles, and religion, you know, we don't know what we're doing. Remember the Gang of Eight information, closed-door testimony. That's all going to be coming out. It'll come cascading down on them, like the transcripts we recently got from Page, Strzok, and Christopher Steele and McCain's aide. They don't want a full and fair Clinton email investigation. They don't care if there's a dual system of justice, no equal justice under the law, no equal application of our laws. We don't care if they follow the Constitution. They don't want an investigation into this rampant abuse of power at the highest level of the DOJ and the FBI. None of the media, you know, just all they want is the Mueller report so that maybe they'll find a line and they'll cling to that, you know, like it's manna from heaven. Because Attorney General Barr and Rod Rosenstein pretty instantly agreed, no evidence of any obstruction for a crime that was never committed anyway. I have a spoiler alert, as you could probably tell. New narrative is a lie, as pointed out last night right here on this program by Rush Limbaugh. Take a look.
So we're being led to believe that this report does contain evidence of collusion. Barr's lying about it. Now, if this is so silly, if it contains evidence of collusion, then where is Mueller on television all night saying, wait a minute, that's not what my report says. My report has plenty of evidence of collusion. I had all these anti-Hillary people on my staff, and we found all kinds of evidence, and Barr is lying. Why isn't Mueller doing that if Barr is lying about what's in the report?
Such a great point. In Breaking Today, the Attorney General Barr, like he said in his 4-page letter, last week, he's going to release the Mueller report mid-April, if not sooner. And there are no plans to submit the report to the White House for a privileged review, which, by the way, I would think is a mistake. That's because apparently they know there's nothing to hide. And all the media lying, all the speculation, you know what? Once again, dead wrong. And by the way, Barr always said he intended to release it. So why would he send out words that would be contradicted when he released it? You know, if it was that big a deal, what would the problem be? They would never stop. They would demand he be fired. Bad news for the media, great news for the country. They never report about the success of the president, the records that he's broken. So without a doubt, a momentous week, not only for the president, but also for this country. Because you know what? We came dangerously close and are still dealing with a significant, serious abuse of power, attempted coup. But for now, and we got to keep vigilant, facts, common sense, logic have prevailed. That's why I keep saying we must get to the bottom of all of this and hold them accountable, and we will on this show. After facing more than 2 years of nonstop, constant tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, nonstop media lies, hysteria, and a 20-plus month partisan witch hunt, the president's been vindicated, and that's killing them. Should be great for the country. The president didn't do it, but not for the media, not for the Democratic Party, because they're going to lose their power, and they've lost their credibility.
After 3 years of lies and smears and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead.
They're wrong so often, aren't they? Think about this. Cambridge police, Ferguson, Baltimore. Think about they wouldn't vet Obama. They wouldn't tell you Obama's failed record. Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman, rush to judgment, no due process, Duke LaCrosse, UVA. They're wrong all the time. And it's sad. Look at what they did to a 16-year-old kid, Nicholas Sandmann. Look at how they wanted to believe Jussie Smollett so bad. A team of partisan Hillary Clinton-loving Democrats found zero evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. The fourth time now we've had that conclusion, because there was no Trump-Russia collusion. Never was, none, zero. And there is no denying the absolute fact that President Trump won the 2016 election fair and square because the American people wanted the disruptor to drain the swamp. And he's doing it, despite a concerted effort by a powerful few, which is really scary, that would abuse the powerful tools of intelligence to take him out. Kind of a soft coup in America. All right, the question is, how do we hold them accountable? Where do we go from here? The biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in American history. A witch hunt spurred by illicit election interference, not from Russia, but from the highest levels of our own government, not rank and file. Coordinated by corrupt, unelected bureaucrats inside the Obama administration, which does make us wonder. Well, now that we learned last week that the Attorney General of Obama, Loretta Lynch, who met on the tarmac with Bill Clinton and said it's a matter, not an investigation, that they were, according to Page and Strzok, the fix was in. They knew the fix was in because there's all Democrats working in the Attorney General's office. And what did Obama know? Now that it's in the Attorney General's office, what did he know? When did he know it? Because everybody must be held accountable. We cannot let this happen, as Donald Trump says, the president says, to any other president. According to Rush Limbaugh, the time to act is now. He's right. Take a look.
The objective remains to get Donald Trump out of office, either by driving his numbers down or impeaching him or defeating him in 2020. They aren't through trying to get rid of Donald Trump. They're not through trying to overturn the election results of 2016. They're never going to finish trying to get rid of Trump. Even if he's elected in 2020, they're setting up the impeachment now with all of this stuff. It's never. That's why these people need to be politically defeated and pounded into the ground to the point of irrelevance.
Great point. To the point of irrelevancy. We don't hold them accountable. This will happen again and again, and we'll lose the country. It's that serious. There's got to be a constitutional republic. All laws are based on our Constitution. We must demand equal justice under the law. Equal application of our laws be restored. No constitutional republic can survive without it. For far too long, we have seen one set of standards for well-connected Democrats, and then there's the standard for the rest of us. Yeah, what would happen to you or me or anybody if we deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails and cleaned out our hard drive with bleach bit and had an aide bust up our devices with hammers and pulled out the SIM cards? Look at Chicago. Jussie Smollett, he was given a free pass. That state attorney general, Kim Foxx, declining to prosecute. All charges dropped, despite overwhelming evidence, including 2 witnesses that would testify that Smollett staged a disgusting hate crime hoax, and video of them buying the very things that were used in that incident. Mayor of Chicago, I'm no fan of Rahm Deadfish Emanuel. He wants Smollett to repay the city of Chicago for the cost of the investigation. Well, there's possible federal charges, but
City of Chicago, and I mean it. Let me be really clear about something. The only reason Jussie Smollett thought he could take advantage of a hoax about a hate crime is for the environment, the toxic environment that Donald Trump created.
Yep, everything in the world is Trump's fault. If you have a hangover, it's probably Trump's fault. Literally, if President Trump adopted the Democrats' insane New Green Deal agenda, gave every American $5 million and cured cancer, they'd still hate him. And by the way, apparently, if Jussie Smollett hires 2 people to dress up like Trump supporters and shout racist things at him while pretending to assault him, all President Trump. Now, meanwhile, what Smollett allegedly did here has real serious consequences. Now, we did send our own Lawrence Jones to Chicago to see what locals think about what has been called a whitewash of justice. Take a quick look.
The verdicts came out on the Jussie Smollett case. They decided to drop the charges. How do you feel about this?
Robbed. The answers are revealing. We have the full video coming up. On this program, we will always fight for justice, due process, and the presumption of innocence, inalienable rights that made this the greatest country man has ever known, that God has ever created. Whether it's Jussie Smollett, his case, Chicago, the deep state abuse of power in Washington and the swamp, we will demand accountability for those who stomp on the rights of others. At the end of the day, it's the future of our republic depends on life, liberty, equal justice for all. All right, joining us now, President Trump's attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, good to see you. Thank you for being
Sean,
with us.
Sean, that was an absolutely terrific monologue, I have to say.
Coming from
Brilliant.
you, those are high words of praise, sir. And we've been friends a long time.
We have.
You used to call into my late night radio show. That's how far back when you were mayor. You know, a full, complete vindication, especially obstructions out. I mean, the Attorney General said it's over. Quoted Mueller. Also said he'd release the report. This wasn't a comprehensive summary of the report. But it's interesting, while no, Mueller didn't make a decision on the obstruction side of things, he just laid it out and handed it to the Justice Department, which then immediately, clearly, the Attorney General and Rod Rosenstein said no.
Well, I mean, first of all, one of the things the Democrats are doing today and the day before, on collusion, let's be clear, Mueller did reach a conclusion that there was no collusion of any kind. He went so far as to say, he used all the words you could possibly use, conspiracy, coordination, not just with the president, but with the entire staff. So that's about, and that comes from Mueller. On obstruction, he said, I don't find any basis to charge a crime, but I can't exonerate him. And the difficult issues of law and fact, I imagine he had like a dispute in his staff, but none of it amounts to any finding of a crime. And prosecutors are not supposed to exonerate generally. So he apparently 3 weeks ago, he gave it to the Attorney General, Rosenstein, and the Office of Legal Counsel. They spent 3 weeks looking at it and came to the conclusion I've told you from the very beginning. This whole obstruction theory is a creation of Andrew Weissman, who's created crimes before and been reversed by the Supreme Court of the United States for finding crimes out of the thin air. And in that case, against businessmen he didn't like. In this case, against Donald Trump, who he despises. I mean, this is a Hillary Clinton partisan. This is a guy who worked with Peter Strzok, who we know hates Trump. I mean, Mueller had on his staff 8 or 9 Trump haters, which is unprecedented in the prosecution staff. So if they didn't find a basis to charge him with anything, they exonerated him. They did everything they could, including putting a man in solitary confinement for 8 or 9 months to break him, and they couldn't break him. So this is about as big an exoneration as I've ever seen, and I've been in the prosecution business for, I don't know, since 1970s. And to try to reverse it is, I mean, I think they look foolish and they look pathetic. And I am confident that I said this from the very beginning. I haven't read the report. I haven't seen it. They can put out every part of it. It is not going to show either one. Otherwise, you couldn't come to the conclusions you came to. And second, if they have a few nasty facts in there, I'm ready to slam it down their throat. Because we have an 87-page report, which we will use. And there are some things that the special counsel did that I don't think they're going to want people to hear.
As a result, he was held responsible for withholding exculpatory evidence. Tens of thousands of Enron accounting people lost their jobs, overturned 9-0 in the Supreme Court. That doesn't happen a lot. And then put 4 Merrill executives in jail for a year. That was overturned by the Fifth Circuit. How does somebody like that get chosen in this? I have a big problem, Mr. Mayor.
Well, you should have a big problem, Sean. It's outrageous, and it never should happen again. I mean, I had great respect for Bob Mueller. When he was first appointed, although, you know, I said, well, yeah, this is a fair guy. Then when he picked the staff that he picked, I thought he kind of lost his mind. I mean, you don't pick a counsel to the Clinton Foundation to investigate Donald Trump any more than if I were investigating Hillary, I'd pick counsel to the Trump Foundation. If I did, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all those characters would go nuts. So that was the first giveaway. Weissman is probably the most notorious federal prosecutor you could find. Everything done wrong in this investigation, he's done wrong before. he charged non-crimes. That was the Supreme Court reversed him for. He charged people with things that are not crimes. Well, he's done that in this case. Obstruction, that's his crazy theory. Not a legitimate theory, and the prosecution of Cohen for campaign fraud. That's ridiculous theory. He made it up.
Last quick question, by the way, I'm nobody that should be questioning. I know your legal background. You were in the Southern District of New York, as prestigious. You prosecuted some of the toughest mob guys in the country. Why waive executive privilege? Why would? I don't think that should happen. Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, I think the question is, if there's any kind of privilege asserted, it's going to be, oh, what's there, what's there, what's there. I can't give you an opinion on executive privilege. I'm not the White House counsel, and I'm not Barr. I don't see all of that. I can only give you the opinion as a private lawyer. I don't care what they put out. He didn't collude. He didn't obstruct. God, do we have to say it again?
You're right.
And I can prove it. So give me what you got, and I will knock it out of the ballpark. With the truth. How about that? The truth.
I do. It's 87 pages, your report. I want to see it.
Yeah, well, you'll see it someday, and I hope I don't have to use it. But if we have to use it, he didn't collude. He didn't obstruct. Grow up, guys. It's like getting used to the fact he got elected. Go see a psychiatrist. Calm down. And adjust to the real world.
Well, I want to see that. I want to see the FISA applications. I want to see 302's
that one's
gang
going
of
to lead
eight.
to perjury prosecutions. Guaranteed.
The president said he's going to release it.
Off.
Told me on Wednesday.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us on this busy breaking news night. All right, the great one, Mark Levin, is about to give us a history lesson and his commentary. You do not want to miss this. Next. All right, joining us now, author of the upcoming book, Unfreedom of the Press, the host of Life, Liberty, Levin, right here on the Fox News Channel, nationally syndicated host of Levin TV and radio host. I call him the Great One for good reason, Mark Levin. Great One, thank me. You know, this has been such a revealing week, Mark. You know, and the funniest thing to me is, so Barr says, as I had planned the whole time and said so, I will be releasing the entire Mueller report, and then all of a sudden, oh, see, he was wrong. He was wrong. Hope, hope, hope. How do you explain this hatred, rage, lying to an audience on a spectacular level?
You know, I've been thinking about this, Sean, how all this came to be and the targeting of the President of the United States and before he was President, the candidate. And I thought, you know what? We have seen something like this before, if you look at history, which is one of the reasons I wrote this book. You know, Franklin Roosevelt used the IRS against his political opponents. He went after Andrew Mellon, who'd been the Treasury Secretary under Coolidge, and tried to destroy him. Mellon had never done anything wrong. He paid all his taxes, and he wasn't even happy that they got him on some penalty. He wanted Mellon in prison. He unleashed the IRS against Huey Long, who he considered a very dangerous opponent, who had been the governor of Louisiana, then the senator of Louisiana, and he told his Treasury Secretary Morgenthau to tell the IRS to go after him. They went after him, and they almost got him, except he was assassinated, so that's how that ended. When you look at the administration of John Kennedy, which we're apparently not allowed to look at, it's called Camelot, he used the Internal Revenue Service and he used the FBI against his political opponents, and nobody knew that better than Ben Bradley, who would become the top dog at the Washington Post, but then was working at Newsweek, because JFK shared IRS information on his opponents with Ben Bradley, laughed about how much they had or hadn't paid in taxes. He shared FBI files with Ben Bradley. Ben Bradley never reported any of that. If you look at Lyndon Johnson, Lyndon Johnson did the same thing. You know, Kennedy put taps on Martin Luther King's phones. They knew all about Martin Luther King's life. Lyndon Johnson continued that. Lyndon Johnson had the FBI surveil the Democrat convention at Atlantic City because he was concerned about his own opponents within his own party. He also had the IRS go after his opponents, and he also had access to FBI files, which he used. Lyndon Johnson tapped the phones of Hubert Humphrey, his own vice president, when he was running for president, because he wanted to know what he was saying about the Vietnam War. He tapped the phones of his political opponent, Barry Goldwater, He knew what Goldwater was planning because they had his headquarters bugged. So they knew what was going on there, too. And I'll tell you what's interesting about all this, Sean. The media didn't give a damn. You talk about abuse of power. These were abuses of power. Now I want to bring it to present day. These are the practices of Democrat administrations. You might ask me, what about Nixon? Nixon did use the IRS. He picked up the practices of Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy. The media never went after Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy because they supported the Great Society and they were in love with Camelot. But Nixon they hated. So one of the impeachment charges against Nixon had to do with using the IRS. And, of course, Nixon was thinking to himself, wait a minute, they did it before me. It didn't matter. Because the Washington Post, the same Washington Post, the same Ben Bradley who had access to certain Internal Revenue information and FBI files as a result of Kennedy, they went after him. But why am I bringing all this up? Barack Obama. Barack Obama. The IRS was used to go after the Tea Party. They viewed the Tea Party as a threat. We have never gotten to the bottom of that. The White House was immune. The president's like the bubble man. That is Obama. We never got to the bottom of it. He dismissed it. The media generally dismissed it. We have Barack Obama unleashed this same FBI against a reporter for the New York Times who he thought was undermining his administration. They unleashed the FBI against James Rose, and a reporter for Fox News who they felt was undermining the administration. They surveilled up to 20 Associated Press reporters. We had never seen anything like this in modern history, the way Obama treated the press. But the press didn't really care, did they? Because Obama was fundamentally transforming America. And that's pretty much what they wanted. CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post, they want the fundamental transformation of America. And now, of course, the House Democrats, they've learned a lot from their Democrat Party past. What are they going after? The president's taxes. Taxes. They want the president's taxes, the way FDR went after Mellon's taxes and Huey Long's taxes, and the way that John Kennedy went after the tax returns of political organizations he opposed, or the way that Lyndon Johnson went after the tax returns of politicians he disagreed with. The Democrat Party has a long, sickening history of using the IRS and the FBI the way that the FBI and the Department of Justice was used against candidate Trump and now President Trump. And this is what I want to get to. The fact is, this all occurred in the Obama administration. It defies logic and reason to believe that the President of the United States back then, Barack Obama, knew nothing. That we had independent rogue operators in Loretta Lynch. We had independent rogue operators in all the top brass at the FBI. That we had independent rogue operators in Mr. Brennan and Mr. Clapper and the rest of them. This can't be. Obama and his inner staff had their fingers in everything, in every department and agency. Moreover, much of the information, the general information about this effort to destroy the candidate of the Republican Party and then the president-elect was in the media because the FBI was leaking like a sieve. And what I'm suggesting to you right now is that there was this vast operation within the Obama administration, hyper-unmasking of individuals over there in the intelligence agencies, the aggressive use of the FBI, including putting spies into the campaign of the Republican candidate for President of the United States, including using opposition research handed to the FBI from the Hillary Clinton campaign, washed through a few surrogates. They had a person over in the Deputy Attorney General's office with connections to the very operation that was doing that. No, these things don't just happen. And now we have the Democrat Party doing everything it can to make sure there's no focus on the corruption and the scandal. That is the real corruption and scandal of what took place. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is the victim. He's not the perpetrator. Look how smooth these guys think they are. Look how clever these guys think they are. They abuse the law. They undermine the Constitution. They abuse the FBI. They abuse the unmasking system. President Obama, he's not investigated. He's not questioned. Hillary Clinton campaign funds part of it. She's not investigated. She's not questioned. The target, the victim, is the one who is investigated. And we should expect this from the media. And I'll tell you why. About, what would it be, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, information came out of the old Soviet Union because, you know, The walls fell down, the gates fell down, and information came out. And there was a reporter in Britain who dug through some of the information. He found something rather incredible. He found evidence, paper, documentary evidence. For those of you who, who like to talk about Mr. Mueller, that's equivalent to DNA, of Ted Kennedy, through a surrogate, contacting the KGB and the Kremlin to try and figure out how to defeat Ronald Reagan in his re-election effort. This isn't conspiracy stuff. This has been written about, not in the New York Times, not in the Washington Post. It's never been discussed on MSNBC or CNN. No, but others, professors, reporters overseas. The document, it's a memo. It exists. It's available for anyone to see. Ted Kennedy, who sought to be the Democrat nominee and lost to Carter and then was thinking about running again, he had contacted through back channels the Soviet government. And they were trying to figure out, Kennedy and his people, how to defeat Ronald Reagan, who was enormously popular. And Kennedy gave them some ideas that some of their apparatchiks should come to the United States and go on TV, show that they're real human beings, and on and on and on. Now, what did the press do with that? Nothing. We have real collusion there. The lion of the Senate. The lion of the Senate, the man who they really wanted on the left and in the media to be president of the United States, had been colluding with communist Soviet apparatchiks, the head of the KGB. And nothing. There wasn't a hearing in Congress, certainly no special counsel. There weren't special reports on CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else. And I'll tell you another story that you might laugh at for the audience. I'll give you a little bit of history. The left, the progressives, they love Alexander Hamilton, don't they? They even made a big play, Hamilton. And all the liberals and Democrats go to watch Hamilton. And they went to Puerto Rico to watch Hamilton. And they go to Broadway to watch Hamilton. And the tickets cost a fortune. And they love Hamilton. Okay, fine. Well, I want to tell them something. It may upset them enormously. When George Washington was president, two of his cabinet members, Hamilton was his Treasury Secretary, Thomas Jefferson was his Secretary of State. War broke out between Britain and France. The party of Jefferson favored France. The party of Hamilton favored Britain. There weren't really formal parties back then, but they became so. Well, what happened? The president, George Washington, wanted to remain neutral. He told his cabinet, we're neutral, we're not getting involved in this. This is a loser. Hamilton goes behind Washington's back, really serves in many respects as a spy for the British, to inform the British on what the President of the United States was thinking, on his diplomatic plans. He undermined the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, who decided to resign. He was so furious about it. And now they have a play for Alexander Hamilton. So let me predict here, maybe we'll get a play one day for Donald Trump, because he never did commit collusion. If they're going to give one to Hamilton, they might as well give one to Trump.
Mark, first of all, we've known each other for so many years. This is why we call you the Great One. The history lesson is really important here. You write these best-selling books on the Constitution, Liberty and Tyranny, probably the defining book on a series of books. You talk about America being in a post-constitutional period. When you look at this, you can only describe it as an attempted coup. It's great to have this perspective. Yes. And it's taken a long time to peel back the layers of this onion. And the thing is you got Loretta Lynch on the tarmac. You've got Loretta Lynch talking to Clinton. You got Loretta Lynch telling Comey it's not an investigation. We learned this week, or in the last week, that Lisa Page and Peter Strzok and the FBI were taking orders from, you're right, Obama's DOJ. We didn't know that completely until just in the last week. And now we have the Nellie Ohr issue. We know Hillary's investigation... Let me just add this thing. Hillary's investigation was completely rigged. We know a FISA court was lied to repeatedly and fraud committed. You see what they tried to bludgeon, ironically, this president before and after the election to influence the vote and then take him out with Russian documents paid for by Hillary, a phony dossier. Mm-hmm. So my question is this. This, to me, is a crisis. If we don't get this right, the country that we love, it's over. We don't survive.
Well, I'll tell you, it's actually worse. You know, we have a First Amendment that protects, among other things, freedom of speech. That First Amendment was put there for the American people. The thinking was that we would have a press that supports America, that supports our Constitution, that supports liberty and supports speech. Not that it would become a propaganda operation and for the Democrat Party or any particular party, and that's what's happened. And I want the American people to understand that the press in this country really, really is bad. And they accuse Donald Trump. You've got Jim Acosta putting out a book with this hyper press release that we've never seen anything like this before, that Trump is destroying the media. I want the people to understand something. Trump hasn't done a damn thing to the media. All he does is confront them verbally, points them out. They say things about him that he never says about them. And again, let's look at history. And perspective is important. John Adams, under the Sedition Act, shut down newspapers and put reporters in prison who criticized him. Abraham Lincoln, during the Civil War, over 300 newspapers were shut down and journalists were put in prison. You can say what you want to defend or not defend. I'm just giving you a little history lesson. Woodrow Wilson, he had his own Sedition Act. He had his Democrats pass it as a way of pushing censorship. He had an entire censorship operation. He put not only reporters in prison, he put political opponents in prison. These are big progressives. You know, Woodrow Wilson, he had a massive propaganda machine taking place. Franklin Roosevelt picked up where Wilson left off in terms of the propaganda machine. He used the IRS against certain publishers who were anti the New Deal, and also to shut down opposition groups, peaceniks and so forth. And so we have Ben Bradley, who was very, very close to John Kennedy and was fed information to John Kennedy. My point is this. This president has been enormously passive when it comes to official actions and the media using him as a target and attacking him and trying to undermine him. The media have thrown in with the big government types. They threw in with a rogue FBI. They threw in with a rogue intelligence service. They threw in with a rogue IRS against the Tea Party. They threw in with a rogue attorney general, several of them. Now they're throwing in with a rogue Congress that wants to go back to taxes and back to the IRS, which is the old game book for the Democrats. And I'm saying this. Freedom of the press is what's in our Constitution. It's what we have a right to. Freedom of the press is not what we have. We have unfreedom of the press. They all sing alike. They all talk alike. They all push the same agenda. They all hate the President of the United States. Every survey and poll shows that. And they are undermining this republic. They are burdening this presidency. It's a disgrace.
Mark, thank you so much for being with us. All right, a lot more to get to. Very important update breaking out of Chicago. Jussie Smollett now a free man. Lawrence Jones, he's in the streets of the Windy City, and you're going to see what they think about Smollett getting that free pass. And we're going to show you that tape and much more next. All right, the Jussie Smollett hate crime hoax saga just continues. Charges have been dropped against the actor, but now the city of Chicago, they are seeking $130,000 from Smollett to pay back some of the expenses spent investigating his reported attack. We sent Lawrence Jones to the Windy City to ask residents what they think of this alleged hoax, miscarriage of justice that followed, and whether or not there should be federal charges and more. Take a look.
The verdicts came out on the Jussie Smollett case. They decided to drop the charges. How do you feel about that?
Robbed. I think that they were too quick to judge him. I believe him.
It's a dumb crime. I don't think he should go to jail for it, but I think it was just a waste of public resources.
Should he have to pay the money back?
I think so, yeah.
Lying to a person or lying about something happening to you should have serious consequences.
Do you feel like he should pay back that money for all the reasons? I mean, there's people dying in Chicago.
Yes,
they put a lot of money.
I think he should be made to pay it back.
All these resources were taken away. Detectives, all these detectives, all the money was used on a lie.
A lie.
And you said that there's missing women.
It's ridiculous.
Everybody got off.
Right.
Is that fair?
No.
I really think the case should have moved ahead. Justice has not been done in this case.
What about the resources spent on this? Because
Huge waste of time.
People who live here, who depend on police resources for their safety, are very angry about it.
My kid's father was killed on the south side of Chicago. Still an unsolved case. All of these resources that we have out here that could have been allocated to unsolved homicides and things that are happening in the city, and then you got somebody that's coming in and making something up like this.
All right, joining us now, author to an introductory explainer to Thomas Paine's Common Sense and Other Writings, Alan Dershowitz, and the host of Whistleblower, former Florida Circuit Court Judge Alex Ferrer. Judge, good to see you. All right,
good to see you,
all right, so I'm going to try and impress a Harvard professor right now. Were the guides and dictates of one's conscience irresistibly obeyed, there would be no need for any other lawmaker. That not being the case, government in its best state is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one. Professor, I see a smile. Maybe I'm going to get a decent grade on this today, but the great pamphleteer, Thomas Paine, I have read Common Sense. I have read his writings. Common Sense is a must-read for every American.
Absolutely, and he got it right. We do need laws, and the laws require that people be held accountable if they make false charges deliberately against people. Now, I don't know the facts in the case, and it's possible that the evidence doesn't justify a prosecution, but that's not what the prosecutor said. The prosecutor said this wasn't a serious crime. It wasn't a crime of violence. It is a crime of violence. Let me tell you why. When you accuse people of committing a violent crime against you, you risk the possibility that people will be falsely arrested, will resist the arrest, and then will be injured or killed by the police. When you provoke violence in this way by claiming you are a victim of violence, you have committed an extremely, extremely serious crime. You know, we live in an age where there are many false accusations out there, and people who willfully and deliberately accuse others of serious crimes have to be brought to justice. Otherwise, the system just doesn't work.
You know, Professor, you cannot explain that any more seriously than you have. And by the way, it happens. Look at Judge Kavanaugh. Look at Clarence Thomas. Look at, Robert Bork. And you know what? They rush to judgment all the time in the media. Judge Ferrer, good to see you again, too. Did you notice that Professor Dershowitz...
Chicago. I mean, got to give credit to the Chicago police. They brought the homicide rate down. Or else they find bodies on the street riddled with bullets and they write it up as a person who died of lead poisoning. But either way, there's no way they have the money to put 12 or 24 detectives onto a fake crime created by...
You're not going to believe Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez blaming for bad poll numbers. Who she's blaming? And we will update you. We have an update on our friend, Judge Jeanine Pirro, straight ahead.